Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum
Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah pada pagi hari ini kita bisa bersilaturahmi dengan sivitas akademik, khususnya Magister Ilmu Ekonomi yang saya hormati Pak Dekan Fakultas Ekonomi Dr. Tibanus Wantara yang sudah berkenan hadir di tengah-tengah kita untuk membuka acara workshop penulisan tesis dan karya tulis ilmiah. Yang saya hormati Prof. Tamat Sarmidi, kami sangat berbahagia, kami sangat senang dan merasa terhormat dengan bergabungnya Prof. Tamat di tengah-tengah kesibukan beliau. Makanya ini saya mulai saja Bu Anita on time, karena beliau pesan nanti siang beliau juga ada meeting dengan fasilitas akademik di UKM, karena beliau juga seperti yang disampaikan tadi, beliau adalah kalau di Malaysia namanya timbalan dekan, Pak Prof ya, timbalan dekan bidang beliau bidang research and innovation kalau nggak salah. Kalau di sini mungkin wakil dekan satu lah. Dekan satu. Jadi saya menyampaikan terima kasih yang sangat tak terhingga atas kesempatan Pak Prof. Tamat untuk bisa membagi sharing terkait dengan riset, terutama terkait dengan bagaimana literatur review di bidang ekonomi dan mikroekonomi. Ini mungkin hikmah dari COVID yang jauh menjadi dekat, yang dekat harus menjauh, harus physical distancing. Jadi saya dengan Prof. Tamat ini sebenarnya kontaknya hanya lewat WhatsApp saja. Alhamdulillah beliau berkenan. Tapi mudah-mudahan ini awal, semoga nanti kita terus bisa menjalin kerjasama, tidak hanya di bidang pendidikan dan pengajaran seperti guest lecture ini, tapi juga bisa harapannya kami di Departemen Ekonomi tentunya ke depan ingin kita menjalin kerjasama yang lebih erat, khususnya di bidang tridharma perguruan tinggi, di pendidikan pengajaran, riset, dan pengabdian terhadap masyarakat. Karena Prof. Tamat ini luar biasa kalau terkait di bidang ekonometrik. Beliau menjadi Vice President di Perkumpulan Ekonometrik Malaysia. Jadi untuk terkait dengan kegiatan-kegiatan riset, beliau sangat banyak sekali. Semoga beliau nanti berkenan untuk bisa collaboration riset dengan kami ya Prof ya, dan collaboration publikasi juga dengan kami untuk bagaimana memperkaya khasanah publikasi kita. Yang saya hormati juga Wakil Dekan 1 dan sekaligus juga materi pada hari ini Pak Mukhtar Rashid. Terima kasih. Ini ceritanya sekarang Dekan 1 ketemu Dekan 1. Alhamdulillah dua-duanya di tengah kesibukan bersedia untuk memberikan materi di workshop perdana ini. Yang saya hormati juga Ibu Ketua Program Studi Magister Ilmu Ekonomi, Ibu Anita Kristina, Ibu Dr. Anita Kristina yang sudah meng-create kegiatan ini. Semoga kegiatan ini bisa menjadi aktiviti yang bermanfaat untuk kita semua, terutama khususnya untuk mahasiswa baru Magister Ilmu Ekonomi. Perlu saya sampaikan Pak Dekan bahwa kegiatan ini sebenarnya merupakan pengganti dari kegiatan matrikulasi untuk mahasiswa baru di Magister Ilmu Ekonomi. Karena beberapa hal, maka kami kemudian berubah atau create kegiatan ini menjadi sebuah kegiatan workshop yang ini maraton, jadi 3 hari, 4 hari bahkan nanti bagaimana kita isi dengan workshop terkait dengan penulisan tesis dan publikasi ilmiah. Karena kalau kita lihat, kalau kita evaluasi beberapa mahasiswa magister ilmu ekonomi itu ada sedikit kendala. Kalau di perkuliahan beliau insya Allah lancar-lancar saja, tapi begitu masuk pada tugas akhir, pada tesis, masa penulisannya lebih dari masa kuliah. Kalau biasanya kuliah itu 1 tahun teori, nulis tesis itu bisa 2 tahun. Makanya kita buat create bagaimana teman-teman mahasiswa baru ini sejak masuk beliau yang sudah bergabung ini, yang sudah dinyatakan diterima ini, bisa langsung bisa langsung start untuk berpikir bagaimana tesis yang akan mereka nanti. Kemudian yang saya hormati dan saya banggakan juga teman-teman mahasiswa dan para peserta yang tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu. Kemudian Bu Dia selaku moderator juga terima kasih atas waktunya dan kesediaannya untuk mengawal diskusi nanti. Jadi tadi ini kurang lebih pesertanya sangat antusias, yang kami buka hanya untuk magister ilmu ekonomi untuk mahasiswa baru dan mahasiswa lama. Ternyata teman-teman dosen juga sangat berminat. Yang sudah daftar ada 115, tapi ini masih bergabung dalam perjalanan, masih OTW menunggu antrian untuk bisa masuk. Jadi terima kasih sekali lagi Prof. Tamat atas kesempatan dan waktunya bisa memberikan ilmunya kepada kita, dan semoga nanti apa yang disampaikan menjadi ilmu yang bermanfaat dan berkah kepada kita. Untuk Pak Dekan, kami mohon Pak Dekan untuk membuka dan memberikan sambutan untuk kegiatan workshop ini. Monggo Pak Dekan, kami aturkan.
Oke, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Allahumma sholli ala sayyidina Muhammad, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. La haula wala quwata illa billahil azim. Puji syukur marilah kita panjatkan kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala, karena atas limpahan rahmat dan hidayahnya kita masih banyak diberi nikmat sehat khususnya, nikmat Islam ya, dan iman, dan nikmat-nikmat semuanya. Shalawat dan salam marilah kita tetap panjatkan kepada Nabi besar Muhammad SAW. Semoga kita yang hadir di majelis yang mulia ini mendapatkan sahabatnya. Amin, amin ya rabbal alamin. Yang saya hormati guest lecture ini, special guest lecture ini Prof. Tamat Sarmidi PhD, ini selaku pemateri pertama. Kemudian yang saya hormati pemateri kedua Bapak Dr. Mokhtar Rasid, Bapak Ketua Jurusan Ilmu Ekonomi, Bapak Dr. Sutikno, Ibu Ketua Prodi S2 Magister Ilmu Ekonomi, Ibu Dr. Anita Kristina, Bapak dan Ibu dosen di lingkungan jurusan Ilmu Ekonomi, dan para mahasiswa yang saya cintai. Sebuah kebanggaan ya, adanya kesediaan dari Prof. Tamat Sarmidi untuk bisa join pada hari ini, pada pagi hari ini, untuk memberikan sumbangan ilmu yang luar biasa. Tentunya ilmu ini, apalagi berkaitan dengan penulisan dan publikasi ilmiah, ini adalah ilmu yang mungkin sangat dibutuhkan sekali, khususnya untuk para mahasiswa. Jadi ini khususnya para mahasiswa magister ilmu ekonomi, atau mungkin ada mahasiswa tingkat sarjana yang ikut hadir. Ini adalah kesempatan yang baik dari Prof. Tamat Sarmidi dan dari Bapak Dr. Mokhtar Rasid memberikan ilmu bekal. Terus terang aja tadi Pak Ketua Jurusan, Pak Dr. Sutikno, itu ya ketika waktu kuliah di S2 maupun di S3, ketika mau menulis, mau mempublikasi itu kadang-kadang mengalami kesulitan. Nah ini, saya harapkan dengan hadirnya Bapak Prof. Tamat Sarmidi dari UGM, Malaysia, dan Bapak Dr. Mokhtar Rashid, ya, ini merupakan tamu-tamu yang luar biasa bagi kita untuk membekali, ya khususnya para mahasiswa dalam penulisan tesis dan publikasi ilmiah. Saya maaf Pak Sutikno, maaf saya tidak bisa terlalu panjang lebar. Prof. Tamat, saya mohon maaf, saya tidak bisa mengikuti. Saya ingin mengikuti acara ini sampai selesai, tapi saya ada undangan join yang lain. Saya sekali lagi mohon maaf pada khususnya Prof. Tamat, ya, khususnya Prof. Tamat, saya mohon maaf, dan Bapak Sutikno dan Bapak Ibu para dosen, saya mohon maaf. Dengan mengucapkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, majelis yang mulia yang membahas tentang workshop penulisan tesis dan publikasi ilmiah, dengan ini saya nyatakan dibuka dan dilaksanakan. Terima kasih sekali lagi kepada Prof. Tamat dan Bapak Mokhtar Rashid. Saya mengucapkan terima kasih atas kesediaan untuk memberikan ilmunya untuk para peserta workshop pada pagi hari ini. Sekali lagi saya mohon maaf apabila saya tidak bisa memberikan atau mengikuti acara ini sampai selesai. Mohon maaf. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Dekan atas waktu dan kesempatannya. Jadi baik Bapak Ibu semuanya, tidak perlu berpanjang lebar lagi. Jadi kita langsung mulai workshop ini. Untuk selanjutnya bisa dipandu oleh Ibu Dr. Dia Wahyuningsih. Beliau adalah staf pengajar di Master. Spesialisasi beliau juga hampir sama dengan Prof. Tamat di moneter dan moneter internasional. Monggo Ibu Dia langsung memimpin jalannya diskusi pada hari ini. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih Pak Tikno atas waktu yang telah diberikan kepada saya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak dan Ibu serta mahasiswa yang saya hormati, kemudian juga kepada pemateri Prof. Tamat dan Pak Mokhtar Rashid. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya di hari ini. Jadi hari ini saya diberikan tugas untuk memandu acara workshop penulisan karya ilmiah, tesis dan publikasi. Jadi pada seri 1 ini adalah membahas tentang literatur review dari perspektif makro dan mikroekonomi. Jadi saya harap hari ini kita bisa mengikuti acara ini dari awal sampai selesai, karena topik ini adalah topik yang sangat menarik buat kita ya, ketika kita mau menulis tesis ataupun publikasi ilmiah. Jadi sebelum memulai acara ini, izinkan saya untuk share CV beliau. Jadi pada pemateri hari ini, yang pertama itu adalah Prof. Tamat Sarmidi PhD. Tanggal lahir beliau adalah 4 April tahun 1970. Beliau adalah profesor pada Fakultas Ekonomi ya di Universitas Kebangsaan Malaysia. Kualifikasi beliau, pendidikannya PhD itu dari University of Leicester UK, kemudian S2-nya dari University Putra Malaysia, kemudian S1-nya itu dari International Islamic University Malaysia. Jadi spesialisasi beliau itu di International Economics dan Applied Macroeconomics. Jadi kebetulan sama kita Pak, saya juga tertarik sekali pada ekonomi internasional seperti yang disampaikan oleh Pak Tikno tadi. Jadi aktivitas beliau saat ini adalah sebagai wakil dekan, ya, kemudian sebagai Vice Presiden Persatuan Ekonometrik Malaysia. Sangat-sangat menarik ketika kita belajar ekonometrik. Mungkin nanti suatu saat Bu Anita kita undang lagi untuk yang di bidang ekonometrik ya. Jadi ya, jadi itu IV yang bisa saya sampaikan. Kemudian pada sesi ini, bentar, saya mau ini dulu, apa namanya, stop share screen. Ya, jadi pada sesi ini nanti waktu pertama kita berikan kepada Prof. Tamat untuk menyampaikan materi. Waktunya, kita tidak membatasi waktunya ya Pak ya, silakan Bapak bisa menyampaikan semua kepada kita semua karena kita memang membutuhkan ilmu baru dari Prof. Tamat. Kemudian yang kedua, presentasi tidak ada waktunya, kemudian yang kedua nanti presentasinya Pak Mokhtar, kemudian yang ketiga baru nanti kita ada tanya jawab. Untuk waktu saya persilahkan Prof. Tamat.
Ya, terima kasih kepada Dr. Diah Wahyuningsih selaku moderator dalam sesi perkongsian ini ya. Yang dihormati juga Bapak Dekan Dr. Pribanus Wantara dan juga Wakil Dekan 1 Dr. Mokhtar Rashid. Jadi bila disebut tidak ada batas waktu ni seolah-olah macam sampai bila ya, nama saya tamat ni, jadi sudah habis masanya nanti. Jadi kita akan bincangkan tentang apa tajuk yang telah diberi pada saya, iaitu Academic Writing, Potential Research Area in Makro and Micro and Macro Economics. Jadi perbincangan ini sangat penting untuk semua, terutamanya mahasiswa dan juga Bapak Ibu dosen, kerana perbincangan seperti ini sangat-sangat penting ya untuk kita menulis dalam jurnal-jurnal akademik. Walau bagaimanapun saya agak kekok bila bercakap dalam bahasa Malaysia kerana saya risau ramai yang tidak faham. Tapi kalau tak faham boleh maaf lagi kan, tapi saya risau kalau salah faham dalam bahasa Malaysia. Kerana sekarang ni di Malaysia contohnya kita sedang menyatakan bulan banci. Banci kebangsaan. Tapi kalau banci ni di Indonesia maksudnya kurang bagus kan? Maksudnya jadi tidak sesuai untuk diperbincangkan. Jadi oleh itu saya mohon izin untuk berbincang dan berdiskusi dalam bahasa yang asing, iaitu bahasa Inggeris. Bisa enggak? Boleh ya? Iaitu perbincangannya dalam bahasa Inggeris hari ini. Nanti kita akan bincangkan dia. Jadi silakan Bapak. Ya. Silakan, boleh ya? Terus ya? Ya.
Boleh so, Bapak, silakan.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, definitely I feel honored, okay, to be invited by the organizer to share my experience in this very workshop. And it's happened to me that I'm the first presenter. Supposed to be my name is Tamat, to be the last, not to begin. So that's why I feel wonder whether and then there is no time limit. I'm afraid that because my father's name is Sarmidi. Sarmidi means is continuity. That's why my father put my name is Tamat. So that in mathematics we have, because my father is also mathematician, so he said that should be a limit for continuity. In mathematics there is one topic, limit and continuity. That's why my name is Tamat, to stop something that is continuous. So that's a brief history of my life. Okay, I'm going to present my presentations maybe within 1 hour or more than 1 hour, maybe a little bit more than 1 hour. And then we're going to have a Pak Mokhtar, Dr. Mokhtar Rashid, maybe after that, and then we open for discussion, or can be for discussion. And if any one of you want to interrupt me, please just interrupt so that we can have more discussion. Otherwise, it is only one-way communications. I prefer that there are 2 ways of communications. So I'm going to divide my presentation into, first of all, the introductions of research and publications. Boleh nampak ya slide saya? Ada ya? Nampak ya?
Nampak, Pak.
Ya, okay.
Nampak, sudah.
And then we're going to little bit on literature review. That is on the what is literature review. And then I'm going to give some anecdotes on the warning of research fallacies that's related to literature review. That's why we need to have a very strong and very solid literature review. And then since I've given topic on macro and micro, so I'm going to talk about revolutions and evolutions of macro and microeconomics a little bit, so that we can have a very clear picture of what's happened in the moderns of economic history. And then I move on to literature review on macroeconomics. I'm concentrate on few cases, first on growth theory, and then on international trade, and then on monetary economics. On the microeconomics, I'm going to discuss on consumer behavior, okay, on the marginal utility of consumer behavior. And then I'm going to discuss a little bit on the very fast growing economic theory that is on Islamic economy. Hopefully discussing these 5 cases can give a clear picture to every one of us, especially on new students, on what do you call it, our supervisors or reviewers, when we submit the paper, they're going to expect that we cover in our academic writing. Okay, as an introduction, okay, there are a few steps. We can say that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, steps before we submit our paper for publications. First of all, definitely, we have to read. That's why in Islam, Allah SWT also mentioned the first verse is on Ikra, to read. Because by reading, we're going to improve our understanding. So, and then from that reading, as my supervisor told me that, you need to read 20 times and then you write 1. Meaning that the ratio of writing and reading is 20 to 1. It's very difficult to write if you do not read. Meaning that for the first few months of writing, we need to read and read and read a lot. The ratio is approximately like 20 article, okay? And then if we read 20 paragraph, then we can write about approximately like 1 paragraph. It's possible to write more, but the content of what we write may not that strong enough. If we write more, the ratio is not 20 to 1. Okay, and then we have, once we write our article, we're going to discuss, because we don't want to, we feel that it is good, but in fact others may not value our work. That's why we need to discuss. And then once we have a discussions, normally we have an internal discussions, we're going to present it, let the bigger audience to listen to our idea of what we wrote in a paper. And then final stage, we're going to submit our paper. Okay, for example, Engel and Granger got Nobel laureate in 1993. Okay, he wrote a first paper, okay, wrote first paper in 1982 only the paper being published in 1986, he presented more than 20 times in seminar and conferences. But at that, for example, when they present it for the first time, the paper does not mature yet. It's not ready for publications. And then he presented again and got some comment, and then presented again and again, few times being presented, and then the paper gets to the maturity stage and then ready for publications. So where is the literature gaps, or where is the process of literature review? So in fact, in the process of writing a paper, or we can say that writing loop or writing circles, literature review is the first stage of writing, that is reading. Then we can identify the gaps and what next for our publications. So it is meaning that the panitia take the right steps, introducing the literature review at the very beginnings of a workshops. Yes. Okay. And then in publications, we always have like, for example, 7 sections. We have a title, we have an authors, we have abstracts, and then we have a keywords, and then introductions. And then after introductions, we come with literature review. And then if it is a empirical paper, okay, we always go for the methodology and then the data collections. Or if it's theoretical paper, then we go or delve detail with the theory. And then in section 5, we always results and discussions, and then conclusions. And then the rest is acknowledgement and references. These are the standard structure of publications, academic publications. But we are not going to start with title and then with authors and abstract. This is not the way of writing. For me, through my experience, I have to start with literature review. Start from the big, we have to start from literature review. Okay, it is the process of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 6. Instead of the 6 steps, but we have to start with literature review. Second, we go to introductions. And the third, we go to methodology, which on econometrics. And then fourth, result and discussions. And fifth, conclusions. And then we go back to now abstract. And the last one, we want to write the title. So the importance of literature review, definitely we want to scope, meaning that to limit our writing scope, and then on the area of interest. Without literature review, we don't have that limitations of our studies. Okay, from reviewer perspective or from our supervisor's perspective, when we want to write a paper, okay, definitely an introduction is very important, even though we write it after the literature review. But introduction is very important because it explains why need to perform the study. Because we want to write something so that the literature will give you why people, the previous researcher, they perform the study. And then why you want to repeat it again, why you want to revisit it again. For example, economic growth and capital and human capital accumulations. There are thousands of papers have been published on human capital and economic growth. But why you want to revisit it again? Why other people need to read your paper rather than going to the previous paper? That's why we need to explain clearly the importance of your research. Okay, so what is the rationale of the study? Show an important problems or question existed. Why, for example, on the wage distributions of income distribution, why we want to revisit that paper again? For example, the equations of on econometrics of linearity. Why you want to address that issue? Why linearity does not work at the moment? Okay, after we have to provide some problem regarding the subject matter that we want to study. Okay, and then we want to show the prior published work has failed to adequately address the problem, because we want to revisit because the previous paper got some problem. That's why we want to do. Where we want to know that previous paper is inadequate is through literature review, meaning that we have to read previous paper, then we decide whether previous paper fail or not in addressing certain issue that arises in current years or in recent period. Okay, in introductions, definitely we have to state the objective, okay, and then the major hypothesis that we want to analyze or want to test. And then the most important in introductions is motivate the paper. Okay, but before that, definitely we need a literature review. Before we want to motivate the paper well, before we can state the hypothesis, before we can write the objective, okay? Before we want to get why we want to do the study, what is the scope of our study, definitely we have to have a literature review first. Without literature review, then we cannot proceed with our research. So in doing the literature review, first and foremost, we have to choose a topic. Definitely topic doesn't mean the title of your paper, of your research, no. What does topic mean? It is a broad area of your research. For example, labor economics, you want to work on monetary economics, you want to work on liberalizations, industrializations, okay, you want to work on capital market, operations. So we have to choose a topic that we think that it is the most suitable for us. There are a lot of areas, okay, and then students always think that the most, we can say that being influenced by the supervisors. For example, you attended the class, and then the lecturer going to give you some descriptions of economic background, and then you interested in the explanations of your lecturer. No, it should be coming from your heart on choosing the topic. Meaning that when you observe people outside there, for example, poverty, come into your heart, you feel sad, you feel moved, okay, on the poverty issue. So it is the biggest issue, because doing research, we need to have your commitment. It doesn't work if you don't have a full commitment on that research. So to choose topic, you need 100% interest in the area, okay? So once you got a broad topic, you define your research questions. You can say that's why, suppose that Indonesia, very rich country, but the economy is not that doing well. Why? There are a lot of people moving on the street with, we can say that incomes very low. Why SME, small medium enterprise, cannot grow, cannot penetrate the export market? Why? So these are the research questions you want to define, okay? Once you got that topic, and then once you got the research questions, we can move on, okay, what previous people has done on the area, okay? So that's why, for example, if you want to know on the SMEs, why income level in some countries low, and why income in other countries high. And other countries, we can say that, for example, developed nations, they don't have much about natural resources. For example, Singapore, they don't have even, we can say that, paddy field. They don't have even rice to produce rice. But why they can an exporter of rice? They don't have a pineapple. But why Singapore is exporting pineapple? Why Singapore is exporting banana, even though they don't have even a land to grow banana? So you decide the scope of your review, okay? To what area that you want to study. For example, on international economics, we can say that FDI, foreign direct investment, which is very much needed by developing countries because the country need extra capital. So what happened? This FDI does not help. Okay, there is no transfer technology to developing countries. They just being a place where developed countries export their bad industries. We can say that it is a pollution heavens for developed countries. So we have to decide on the scope of the literature of your review. Okay, it is your decisions. Don't be too broad, because if you go too broad, then there are volumes of papers, volumes of article out there, and definitely it won't, meaning that you cannot cover all those paper within the time limit. Because, for example, S2, you have time limit maximum plus courses 2 years. Suppose that, okay, you want to do research within 6 months. So with that time limit, you have to scope, okay, your review. Okay, once you have that, you have to select the databases that you will use to conduct the research. There are a lot out there, like Science Direct, Scopus, okay, Web of Science, Wiley. There are a lot of databases, Bloomberg, okay, so that you familiar with those databases, and you go and then you find, you dig on the what do you call it, on the article that you interested. Okay, as a rule of thumb, now we have these good sources. We call it Web of Science, Elsevier, okay, Wiley, the internationally recognized publishing company. Okay, for example, like in Islam, if you want to read hadith or any jurisdictions in Islamic law, there are, we call it as authentic sources. For example, if hadith, there are 6 authentic sources, Sahih Sittah, we call it, like Bukhari, Muslim. So in general also, we need to have these authentic sources. Okay, I advise my students to refer to only on Web of Science. Okay, only on Web of Science, and we always go for Elsevier journals only, because they have a very thorough and very comprehensive reviewing process. It's not easy to publish in those journals, because whatever statement that you put in your article, they want to clarify, and then they want you to justify the originality, the authenticity of your article. So it is very important to choose the database. Okay, we can say that the literature review should be guided by central research questions, and then it should be a loose collection. Should be represent the background and research development, okay, of very specific research questions in your area. And then conduct research and find, once you completed of these 3, meaning that you decided all these 3, then you can conduct research and find the literature. Okay, I did not cover today on how you manage your literature. There are a lot of, because what happened, it sometimes happen, as for example, during my time, I got a friend, before the final submissions of her thesis, unfortunately, okay, the computer crashed down, okay, meaning that she cannot retrieve the data and then the write up from the hard disk. So it takes time, okay, because you have been doing that for almost like 3 years for S3, for S3, and then unfortunately, the database, the external hard drive that you, you store your informations, okay, corrupted and crash. So make sure that you keep track, okay, keep track of whatever you did in a cloud or in a safe place. For example, you have a duplicate of your external hard drive or your pen drive or your flash drive. You need to have a backup. Don't keep only one. But nowadays, for my case, I always keep it in cloud. Doesn't mean that we need to subscribe like Dropbox, iCloud. That one is, they give you a small amount, a small storage capacity. But for them, sometimes if you did it a lot of works, you cannot keep those. You can go for free, like Google Drive. And then you can keep all those in email. You create on your email in Yahoo, and then you have your own email in Gmail or whatever platform you have. And then whatever development you have, new article you have, you just email those article to your own email. So that next time you can have, we call it, you can collect or you can get those informations from your email. That is very, we call it the safest mode of keeping track of your research material. Otherwise, in your hard drive, in your hard disk, it is very easy, very convenient to retrieve once you open your laptop, your computer, and then you can get access to it without internet. But bear in mind, sometimes because our devices, electronic devices got time limit, for example, 3 years, 4 years, and sometimes less than that, even the warranty for 1 year, but you may not get full warranty of what information inside those pen drive or hard drive. So once on the literature review, we have to ask our questions. How many studies do you need to look at? Is it 100? Is it 200? Is it 1,000 paper that you want to read? Definitely no. It depends on your area. If it is a very theoretical paper, you want to write on theory, for example, on rational expectations, there are thousands of papers on rational expectations. But if you want to write on Islamic economic theory, okay, you want to say that on Islamic theory on consumption, suppose that. Maybe there are only 20 to less than 50 papers writing theoretically on consumptions, on Islamic perspective. So it depends on area. But if you want to study on capital markets, international monetary markets, that one you can have thousands of paper, okay? And then how comprehensive should it be? The word comprehensive is very, we call it subjective. No one can say that it is comprehensive unless you submit to an expert in the area, and then the expert in the area says it is comprehensive enough. There is no rule of thumb, but we can say that it should cover all aspects in the area. Okay, if it is an economy, should be on the firm side, on the consumer side, on the government side, on the institutional sides, okay, and then domestic and international. That 7 area should be covered in your literature review to make it comprehensive. For example, you want to study on FDI, okay, if impact on growth. You need to cover on the institutional, you have to cover on the government, you have to cover on the firm level, you have to cover on the government, okay, you have to cover on the consumer side. Okay, does that meaning that on the household, and then how on the international part, meaning that on the open economy, and then on the domestic economy. For me, once you want to say it is comprehensive, it should be covers that 7 aspect. Okay, If you cover that 7 aspect, we can say that it's comprehensive. But for an expert, sometimes, for example, your supervisors are expert in the area, he may say that it's not comprehensive enough. Okay, some students, it takes, for example, like 6 months to read. Okay, to make it, our literature review is comprehensive enough, meaning that it takes 6 months. But for theoretical paper, sometimes take less months, but it needs a rigorous and extra effort to understand the theoretical paper compared to empirical paper. How many years should it cover? Okay, meaning that's how long you want to trace back the paper, up to which year? Up to 70s, up to 60s, up to which year? Okay, on this area, we need to cover to the seminal paper. You understand what does seminal paper? Meaning that, for example, the Nobel laureate. Okay, Nobel laureate on time series econometrics, because my area on econometrics is Engel and Granger. Okay, who did on these non-stationarity things of time series. So we have to trace back towards to the end, which is to the Nobel laureate in the area. We call it seminal paper produced by the father of area in the area that we want to study. Of course, modern economy can start from Keynes, start from Marshall, start from classical point of view, which dated almost 200 or 100 years back. But not necessarily that we go to that's long, 400 years. But if you want to study on the Keynes theory, definitely you have to refer to Keynes theory. So you have to move back to 1930s, a paper. So it depends on how many years it should cover on the area or the Nobel laureate or the seminal paper that you want to refer to. Once you reach to the seminal paper, then we can say that it is enough in the area, okay, to the seminal paper in the subject matter that you want to study. Okay, why we need to have a very comprehensive literature review? Because we want to tell others that we are familiar with the subject matter, okay? And we have studied or we have researched on the credible, what do you call it, sources, okay? So they're going to see our paper is a credible paper as well. So they know that we are familiar with the relevant literature review or the subject matter, so that the editors will have a look upon us with credible belief, okay, on our works. So basically, this is very, you have to jot down, okay, in doing a literature review, you need with this theme, what we have known, what we have not known. This is the key words in literature review. Once you read, okay, then you can summarize and synthesize what you know. But on top of that, you need to you have to some sort of initiate something in your mind, that's what we need to know more. Okay, not enough only what we know. Okay, because you want some, because it is a frontier of knowledge. You want to contribute to knowledge. That's why it is very important to have what we have not known. Okay, this is a very important words or phrase that you need to question yourself. Okay, once you read literature review, for example, you read 100 articles. Okay, definitely from that reading, you will know something. Okay, from your understanding, you know something. But you have to ask yourself, what we have not known. Okay, I'm going to show you some example after this on different area what we need to ask ourselves on what we have not known. Okay, and then we have to discuss why we choose that paper. For example, we have 100 papers. Do not cite those 100 papers, all 100 papers. Okay, we have to be selective, and we have to choose which paper that we think relevant for our works. So that's why we need to discuss why a paper is being cited, meaning that why we take that paper to be included in our write-up. Okay. We're going to explain why cited paper matter to our own arguments. Okay. One thing is that why that paper being cited or included in our paper, but at the same time, why that paper contribute to our argument. For example, on econometrics, for example, we have this ordinary least square estimation, OLS. We estimate beta or elasticity, okay? And then we got few papers in the area of elasticity of demand. For example, padi or rice demand in Surabaya, okay? The elasticity to weather changes or to imported certain product, for example, wheat or flour. Okay, what is the elasticity? Can be it substitute or can be complement to those products. Okay, once you read the literature, okay, and then you cite some paper, you know what have been done before. But another issue is that you have to explain why you cited that paper, okay, that's contribute to your argument. For example, you can say that previous paper in the area, for example, someone who did that in Indonesia, I'm not very familiar. Suppose that Pak Malik, okay, someone who write that paper, Pak Malik. But you can critique or you put your argument, okay, Pak Malik has cited, meaning that done the study, but the estimations based on linear estimations, while the behavior of current economy may not fit to linearity. There are some we can say that it sometimes is non-linear. Okay, so that's why we include the paper from Pak Malik. Okay, that's why we cited, because the paper contributed to our argument. Okay, because the paper, we are not critiquing, we are not, we call it condemning the previous paper. But we want to say that the limitations of the previous paper, that's the paper only cover linearity on the parameter, or we can say that the parameter is linear, okay, while we want to improve further, we want to add non-linearity. Suppose that we want to say that the parameter could be quadratic, okay, rather than linear. So that's why we have to argue in our paper why that paper importance to our literature review. Okay, in literature review, do not include all published paper in the area. Okay, definitely if you search in internet, there might be thousands or 10,000s of article. Do not include all. Do not cite too broad a literature and too much literature. You have to be very focused from the very beginning. For example, if your argument on linearity, from very first paragraph, you address that linearity. Okay, previous to show that the importance of non-linearity in the studies. Okay. Okay, we need to references need to be up to date. Okay, we can say that any paper that published before 2000, okay, unless they are critically important, then we need to include. It depends. Okay, doesn't mean I want to say that paper before year 2000 is not important. No. it depends on certain area. For example, like in capital markets, okay, stock markets, maybe, okay, because the development of the area is very fast, you need to have a very recent and very current paper, maybe 2010s and above. But for example, like labor economics, okay, which not that much changes, but of course with nowadays with COVID, the pandemics, okay, has changed a lot of economics framework and structure. We need to have a very current and very recent paper. Okay, and bear in mind that don't cite, okay, lower, or we can say that low tier journals. Low tier journal is, we can say that why it is low tier, because there are a lot of ambiguities, uncertainties with a low tier journal. Sometimes it is, we can say that being the process of reviewing the paper may not proper. You pay the publisher, okay, you pay 200 or few $100, you submit it this week, next week being published. Okay, so we can say that it is not a very proper of doing the analysis. So we need to very current, okay, in publishing and in sharing those paper, and should be from high tier journals because the authenticity. We need to have very authentic journal, because it is an academic work. Without authenticity, our work cannot be regarded as credible and academic. Okay, so we need to have that. Okay, the way we want to write literature review, just go a few, okay, because I think it is very important. The way to write literature review, we don't list or only summarize the literature review, is find of the findings, okay? It is not the way to write a literature review. We have to write literature review by theme, okay? For example, domestic economy and then international economy on consumer side. We don't like list down. We get 100 papers and then we summarize each paper, okay? So it's not good, okay? Like start with reference of a paper, for example, Kim 2010 examines. Then we describe the paper and of that Kim on each paragraph. No, it is not good or not a right way of doing literature review. Sometimes we can have that, but when, for example, Kim, we want to show the limitations or what's being done, okay, not only summarizing, like the objective and then on the what do you call it, the on the methodology and then the findings. For 5 papers repeated the same technique, okay, the objective and then the methodology and then the finding, okay, and then you get another paper, start with the same format. Like for example, you write it again, the name of the authors and then the objective, and then you write the methodology, and then you come up with the findings. No, it's not the way to write the literature review. So, and then the most important thing is that, bear in mind, you have to organize the discussions in an effective manner. Okay, there is no way to teach you how to organize discussions in effective manner. It should come by, we call it, by practice. The longer you are in academic world, the more you write paper, the more effective you are in writing papers. Okay, For myself also, when I start writing, we can read our paper and then we feel that it is very awkward, okay, very stiff. It's does not smooth, okay. When others, definitely when others, or for example, our supervisor read it, our supervisor might be very polite, so they don't want to blame us, but he said, okay, you need to read more, okay, because by reading more will improve your writing. So we need to have these transitions, okay, because these transitions is always help to connect the paragraph together, especially on the literature review. Okay, one of the first research to investigate the problem is Lee. So this is some example of the connecting words. Okay, for example, you have introduced something, okay, on linearity of estimations, okay, and then you talk about non-linearity. So who the seminal paper on non-linearity? So we can say that one of the first researchers to investigate this problem is, meaning that regarding the non-linearity estimations, then you state that it is the linking words. Okay, another example is like, for example, Peter and Smith counter Lee's argument. Okay, we have done linearity, maybe Lee did on, we call it quadratic functions, but Peter and Smith 2013 negates or counter arguments of Lee on quadratic. We can say that Peter and Smith says no need a prior informations on the types of non-linearity. We cannot impose certain non-linearity to the model. Okay, rather than we put it quadratic, let's endogenously determine by the what do you call it, the estimations. It's have to decide on the linearity. So, and then you can move further. This issue become more complex when a third school of thought is considered. Okay, for example, Lee is on the non-linearity, which is quadratic, and Peter and Smith maybe more than that, okay, on the functional form, and then we can say that there are another issue being brought forward by another person. So to support the arguments of the third school or the third category, we can say that one research who agree, okay, the word agree on Lee is someone. So this is the way that we mold or we woven or we write our literature review with some linking sentences and linking phrase, so that we can have a very smooth write up of journal articles, okay, or thesis writings. Okay, I give you some example on literature review. Okay, these are few words. Okay, like author is neutral, like a comment, describe, illustrate. Author implies, meaning that to say something, but not necessarily that we can say, okay, or explain, no. We can say that it is analyze, assess, conclude. So these are the words that can have on us. Like other authors argue, we can say that is content, whole, maintains, okay, on certain arguments, dispute, insist on his thought. So these are the few words. You can have like for students, you can have one notes, book notes. You should write, okay, all those probable or potential words on certain area, okay. Okay, before I move there, I want to show you one of the web that can have very good literature review. let me share for a while. Where is the for a while? I want to show you. Okay, can you see this academic phrase bank?
Ya, bisa.
Okay, bisa ya. Okay. This one of web page academic phrase bank. Okay, if you see on the left panel, okay, on the top panel there, okay, on the horizontal, introducing works, referring to sources, describing method, reporting results, discussions finding, and writing conclusions. Okay, these are sections in writing. Introducing works means like an introduction. Referring to sources, definitely this one is literature review. Let's see on literature review. Okay. Okay, on the left panel, we have being cautious, being critical, classifying and listing, compare and contrast, defining terms. So, in fact, they have full words. For example, if I show you general comment on relevant literature, okay, I want to make it bigger. Okay, suppose that these are few words that you need to have in your paragraph. Suppose that the literature on X, meaning that's on the subject matter that you interested in, has highlighted several what? Because they want to more recent attentions has focused on the provisions of. So there are a lot of sentences to connect between paragraph. For example, this one is on previous research, okay, a historical perspective. Research into act has a long history for many years. Okay, one of the, what do you call it, advantage of this, when you go for turn it in for plagiarisms, okay, it does not being counted in plagiarism. Because what? It is a general statement. It is not a topic or not a subject matter. Okay, so you have to refer to this Manchester academic phrase bank. Okay, we can have like introducing works. There are a lot of sentences how to introduce your work. Okay, and then on reporting results. But today's interest or concentration is on referring sources, which to do on the literature review. Just I want to show this on the website. Okay, that's you need to have that. Okay, any questions from audience? Maybe anyone want to ask me questions because already 1 hour. Otherwise, you feel very sleepy.
Yeah.
If anyone want to ask questions, short questions.
Budia, boleh bertanya?
Ya, boleh. Silakan Pak Riz.
Ya, terima kasih Budia. Thank you, Prof. Tamat. My name is Tris Yuwono.
Yes.
We met last year at UNER at the panel data training event, if not.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I want to ask about two things, but I think that both related. I think first is if we want to examine, for example, the impact of financial development on poverty reduction, how do we start with the background? Because from previous research or from theory, we know that poverty reduction is not only influenced or not only depend on financial development, but by other variable such as growth, labor force, or human development. So how we start with the background? Okay. Second is then how do we at the analysis and discussion stage talk about how we talk about the other variable as I mentioned earlier. Are we going to discuss in depth about this other variable or what? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Trisuyono. It is a very good questions. Okay, we met last year in UNER. Okay, I sorry because today we cannot face to face to see you, so maybe I cannot recall what do you call it your face. Okay. I think it's a very good questions, okay, and on these the poverty reductions and okay financial development. Definitely nowadays, most of us or economists especially, they believe that the financial development could improve economic well-being, or we can say that reduce poverty rate. Okay, but after few, we can start like this. Okay, it is being admitted. Okay, everyone agrees that, unanimously agreed that financial development has positive impacts on poverty reductions. Okay, we can start some sort of that. But the word may not but I just want to explain to you. But okay, recent data shown otherwise. You can show that, for example, in some countries, especially in Middle East, oil-producing countries, okay, financial development is very high, but income distribution is very big, meaning that in terms of income inequality, what I mean, okay, the distribution is very big. Only, for example, 1 or 2% controlling like maybe 90% of the national wealth, while 10% of national wealth being distributed or being shared by like maybe 95% of the population. And then we can show graphical figures on the scatter plot. Okay, scatter plot showing that financial development is high, but poverty rate also, or income distributions also very high. So that one thing, okay. But we can say that others argue it's not financial development that matters. It is, we call say that now, financial inclusions. Okay, rather than financial development, people talk about financial inclusions. Because what happened, if financial development issues, a country can have very good financial development, but not everyone get access to finance. For example, on the capitalist point of view, you need to have a collateral to have an access to a debt, okay, or bond. So how about those people who born poor, that don't have a collateral to get access to debt or what do you call it, bond? So we need to argue along that line that it is not the financial development, but it is a financial inclusions, which matter most on the issues. Does it answer your questions of Pak Trisuyono? Do you think that the way that you want to argue things like that, okay? It's not on the financial development. And another thing is that, as I mentioned to you just now, for example, you want to say on financial development and poverty reductions, okay? Most of the arguments in literature, they go for linearity, or we can say that monotonicity, meaning that you got the elasticity, financial development increased by 1%, okay, poverty reductions improved by how many percent? Doesn't matter which country, doesn't matter which year, doesn't matter what developments, state or education level of the populations. So that's we can say that linearity imposition, we impose linearity on the issue is not right. Okay, because the arguments is that each country got, we can say that it's a heterogeneity, nature of a country. Indonesia and Malaysia, or developed country and US, okay, may different. Malaysia and Indonesia may the same level. But if we compare to developed countries, suppose that United States, okay, the level of education is very high, level of infrastructure is very high. So that's, we call it, got a premise on the arguments that we cannot put a same linear argument on Malaysia, Indonesia, and United States. Okay. Regarding the other variables, should be included in the model or in the analysis, definitely you have to read an article, or we can say that literature review on the theoretical part. Because, for example, you adapt certain models, okay, Schumpeter, okay, what are the, we call it baseline model of these people. For example, you adapt a Sing 2017 paper, okay, on financial development. So you have to use this paper as a baseline model. So you have exactly to include all variables that being used by them. For example, Lau and Sing paper, okay, they have these three components: education, okay, capital, and then institutional. So you have to include these three. On top of that, once you have your basic line model, you have to improve on your own. We call it augmented model. That is, you improve the model by adding certain variable with your justification. Why? Because you can say that Indonesia imposed certain rules and regulations on financial access or on financial development. That's why we want to have this variable in the model. Okay, you have to justify. But whatever basic model you refer to or you try to adapt, definitely you need to include all variables in that, we call it baseline model. Don't exclude any, we call it variable from baseline model. If you want to improve, you want to exclude or you want to include another variable, should be not in the baseline model, but on the improved model or the augmented model. So it depends on the literature or countries that you are referring to. Maybe they got certain policies. That's why you need to include that variable. Does it answer those two questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tamad. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Shall we start, Ibu Dia? Continue, eh?
Ya, silakan dilanjutkan.
Okay, yes. Let's we move further, eh? Okay. We want to have this figure. Just now, Pak Tri Suyono asked us question. It is very important to have a very comprehensive study on the literature. Otherwise, we need to have, like, not necessarily econometrics, okay? We don't want to have, we call it premature analysis, okay? Suppose that in this case, I just want to show you how the analysis can be misleading, okay? If we don't understand the subject matter or the literature review well. Suppose that someone write a paper, okay? They plot or they regress on the linear model. This blue line is linear classical regression line, okay? Suppose that on the horizontal, we have police department staff per capita. And then on the vertical line, we have violent crime rate. Di sini jumlah polisi ya di di daerah tersebut, di kabupaten ataupun di bandaraya. Di sini yaitu kadar ataupun jenayah, crime rate. If we plot this, we can find that it is positively related. Okay, positively related. We can say that increase in police staff per capita, then increase in violence or crime. But does it right? Does it true? Definitely not. So if you want to create a policy, how to reduce crime, definitely, since it is positively related, we can say that reduce number of police per capita. Okay. For example, you have 3.5 police per area, we have this crime rate. But if you have only one policeman per capita, then you have only this much of violence. So how to improve or to solve the problem of crime in locality? Does you suggest that reduce number of policemen in the area? This, if you did not read well, then you may suggest these things. Okay, it happens one time. Okay, I could not recall the paper, but he suggests this. Okay, fancy number on the plate number, registration number create death. Okay, fancy registration number. Because this, so what is the trick? The policy is that don't create fancy number on your registrations. No, it's not, because it is incomplete literature review that leads to a we call it premature conclusions. Another example is that this from Clark and Warburn, okay, is 1932 papers, where America, United States, US, they ban on illegal liquor, okay, illegal liquor, because they want to control liquor, minum arak ya, minuman yang memabukkan ini contoh di Amerika, okay, kerana mereka mau mengawal konsumsi minuman keras, minuman yang memabukkan. Maka mereka telah mengharamkan di dalam perundangan di di negeri mereka, di beberapa daerah, mereka telah mengharamkan penggunaan arak. Kita tahu di negara kita memang tidak dibenarkan. Okey, tapi di negara mereka pada tahun sekitar 1930-an, okey, mereka telah mengharamkan minuman keras ini. But the data show once they prohibit liquor consumptions, okay, the expenditure increases. The total expenditure on distilled spirits as percentage of total alcohol sales increases abruptly from around 40 to 50% increase to 90%. Okay, and then once they got this, they legalize again on the use or drinking of this liquor. But it is not the case, okay? It's not because of the prohibitions. It's because of other things that once it's prohibited, they got limited access, okay? The number of supplier being reduced. That's why the price increases, and then the share of income being used on liquor has increased, the percentage. It is not because of the prohibition. So in this case, we need to be very, very clear of the literature, especially on the theoretical part, what model we want to choose, what model we want to select, and why it is shown, okay? Otherwise, we're going to have a different argument and different understanding. Okay, I just want to give this light, in 5 minutes, a light discussion. Did you see this bus? Bagaimana Ibu dia, doktor dia?
Ya.
Boleh nampak ya?
Nampak Pak, nampak. Bis
Okay.
dengan banyak
Saya
orang.
mau tanya, ini kerana pemahaman tadi kan, premature policy. Ini satu orang namanya Raj. Ini ya, ini satu paradoks dinamakan, namanya Raj. Beliau ini tinggal di Punjab, di negeri India, dan beliau mahu berlibur kerana sudah lama tinggal di Punjab, iaitu Deccan Desert, separuh padang pasir ya di Punjab, mau pergi ke ibu kotanya India, iaitu Delhi. Maka beliau telah naik bis, di Malaysia panggil bas, naik bas. Jadi basnya seperti di India, kita tahu wah keadaannya gawat, penuh. Bukan di dalam saja penuh, tapi di luar juga penuh. Okey. Maka dalam perjalanan ada satu orang, ini bintang Bollywood ini. Namanya Aishwarya Rai atau Kajol ini. Menahan bas ini. Okey. Bagaimana agaknya Ibu Nur Azizah, berhenti atau enggak nih? Berhenti atau tidak nih?
Kira-kira berhenti, Pak.
Ya,
Karena ada cewek cantik.
Imran Rashid, macam mana Imran Rashid nih? Berhenti atau enggak nih? Ya, Rohmawati ya, Siska. Bagaimana, berhenti atau enggak?
Ini malang ya. Lo kamu ngetek apa enggak?
Okey, saya ringkaskan cerita ya. Semua penumpang ini, Raj dan yang lain-lain kawan-kawannya atau yang ni, mengatakan berhenti. Tapi malangnya driver bisnya enggak berhenti. Lalu ditahan oleh satu orang tua ini, iaitu petani. Mereka bilang jangan berhenti, sudah penuh. Tapi berhenti kan, basnya berhenti. Kemudian ditahan oleh satu orang tua juga. Ini dalam kisah ini beliau memegang pisang, buah pisang kan yang sudah masak ranum, yang sudah rosak. Maka ditahan, maka penumpang bis kata enggak, jangan berhenti. Tetapi driver basnya berhenti juga. Setelah ambil orang tua ini, maka dia ambil orang tua yang kedua. Maka ditanya oleh Raj setelah sampai ke destinasi, kenapa yang pertama tadi kamu enggak berhenti? Kerana pemahaman kita premature. Kita melihat yang luaran sahaja. Kenapa enggak berhenti kan? Wanita cantik. Jadi harus berhenti. Tapi driver basnya, Pak sopirnya bilang, ini kan bekas tunang saya. Saya sudah bergaduh dengan dia. Jadi saya enggak boleh berhenti. Kan? Kalaupun bisnya kosong, Pak supirnya bilang, kalau bisnya kosong, saya pun enggak berhenti juga untuk ambil dia. Kerana ini kan bekas tunangnya. Dan kedua orang tua ini adalah ibu dan ayah saya. Walaupun bas ini penuh, saya sanggup menurunkan kamu untuk kamu tidak ikut naik bas ini, kerana saya mesti mengambil mereka, kerana mereka ini adalah ibu bapa saya. Apa pelajaran? What is the lessons from here? Okay, the Nobel laureate in 2016 on behavioral economics introduced fast thinking and slow thinking phrase that from merely observations, okay, from surface observations may lead towards premature policy. That's why we need research. We need to do research. We need to read more, okay, on the relationship between this driver and this lady. What is the relationship between the driver and this old man? And the relationship between the driver and this old lady? And then what is the relationship between the driver and the rest of the passengers, okay, in this bus? Then we can come with a proper, we call it a proper policy. So without that, we may come with premature policy. Another example. Okay, in his hometown, Raj, people get a water dari sumur kan? Mereka mengambil air dari sumur. Lihat ini wanita-wanita, mereka mengambil air dari sumur dan kemudian meletakkan air yang telah diambil dari sumur tadi itu di atas kepala dan dibawa pulang ke rumah. Tetapi apabila Raj ini sudah sampai ke Delhi, dia mendapati bahawa orang-orang di Delhi begitu mudah untuk mengambil air. Di Delhi hanya perlu membuka ini kepala pipe kan, air, maka keluar air. Maka because of lack of understanding, Raj found that there's a hardware shops in Delhi, and then he buys numbers of kepala pipe ini. Okay? So what happened? He showed to people in his hometown that you can get water instead of getting from this well. No, you need to have this water tap. We call it water tap. And then from this water tap, you can get a water. Do you think that by buying this water tap can give you water? Definitely not. It's not that easy to get the water because behind on the third figure, okay, behind here, there are water system. This is from reservoir. This water connected from reservoir, and then there are billions of dollars. The government has what do you call it? The government of India has invested to produce fresh, clean water to all citizens in Delhi. Okay, it's not a very simple process. It is a very long process. So by having this water tap is not solving the problem. So similar with our country, sometimes the bureaucrats or the officers in our country, they visited developed country like Japan, Europe, and then they went to United States. Okay, but not necessarily what they observe in United States, in Japan, or in Europe can be implemented in our country, like Malaysia and Indonesia. There are, we call it in economy, endogeneity, missing variable that cannot be, what do you call it, cannot be explained in the model that need to be in the model. So this is a very important to understand this. Then we can move to we need research. Okay, I'm going to skip this part. Ibu Dia,
Iya, Bapak.
Can you give me like 3 minutes?
Silakan.
Yeah?
Baik.
Okay. After that, are we going to, because saya mau ke toilet sekejap ya?
Iya, baik Pak, baik.
Okay. 3 minit.
Ya, baik.
Okay.
Mungkin ada rekan-rekan atau mahasiswa yang mau bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia pun juga tidak apa-apa. Silahkan bisa menuliskan di chat ya, atau bisa bertanya langsung seperti yang Pak Riz kemukakan tadi. Silahkan terkait dengan literatur review atau mungkin juga bisa terkait dengan jurnal gitu ya. Silakan bisa ditanyakan. Pak Tikno. Mas Andri, kalau mau bertanya Mas Andri. Mohon ditunggu sebentar, Prof. Tamat sedang ke toilet 3 menit. Pak Mohtar.
Oke, apa dia?
Ya, wis
Halo?
siap Pak Mota. Sudah siapkah hari ini?
Oh, tamamu kayak. Ini gak nongol sih gitu.
Enggak, bapaknya lagi ke toilet sebentar, minta waktu 3 menit.
Oke.
Ini panjenengan ya.
Oke, siap. Bentar kamu.
Ya, silakan
Oke,
Bapak.
ya. Oke, minta maaf ya.
Enggak apa-apa, enggak apa-apa.
Ya. Yang ini saya rasa I'm going to skip this section. Okay, then we go to the theme that we're going to discuss today on the macro and micro economics. Okay, so as we notice that economic development has been from very established sources, okay, because before we move on to understand better, okay, we need to know the development of this, we call it macro and micro economics, we can say that revolutions. We can say that it started from Great Depression in 1930s. After we can say almost similar or same with our case, the deadliest pandemic in 1918, which approximately like at that time 50 million fatalities. Now we move in the world total for this COVID, okay, reach millions already. So in fact, it's like some sort of it's repetitions of previous pandemic in 1980s, now in 1920, like almost 100 years already. Okay, first of all, let us throw back to we can say that 1930s, on the Great Depressions, that's exposed at that time fundamental flaws in economic theory, okay, which is not true according to at that time the founder is John Maynard Keynes. The Keynesian school thought or stressed that's a government responsibility for price stabilizations policy that requires a lot of data compilations, okay, and econometrics modeling on the what do you call it, on econometric parts. Because what happened is that in academic world, Keynes want to prove that the data is talking different versions from the theory. The classical parts, meaning that first the classical, like Adam Smith and so on, they believe on invisible hand. But Keynes want to prove that after the pandemic and Great Depressions, okay, the data does not support the classical view. So that's why during the Keynesian revolutions, there are a stage where the economists try to compile large number of data sets, And then they want to analyze the data in a structured way rather than reporting on what do you call it, part by part, but they want to have a very solid and very systematic data analysis. So they come with this at that time a two-stage least square technique, okay, to improve the what do you call it, the estimations process at that time. Okay, move on to the second. We can say that's neoclassical synthesis after the Great Depressions, and then Keynes come in to promote the importance of demand side. Okay, on the demand side, where the government need to buffer the downside of the cycle of a business cycle, meaning that to improve the demand side. So by times the Keynesian's macroeconomic has reached full maturity, where people don't believe anymore on Keynesians because it failed to improve further the economy, especially in 1960s. There was no coherence, we can say that, between theory and new emergence of new branches in the economy. There is, we say that, a need for new, like previously Keynesians, they tried to negate the classical. So this one, the classical want to refine, we can say that refine, of the existing Keynesian's economy. We can say that neoclassical is more on refinement work of rather than fundamentally challenge the Keynesians. They are not challenging the Keynesians, but we can say that they are refinements of the classical way of thinking on the economy. Therefore, they come up with, we can say that the new emergence of micro foundations of macroeconomics. Okay, the development is that classical come with a microeconomy, okay, on the individual consumer or individual household and individual firms. But after that, Keynesians come in, they don't, that they want to show the data does not support for individual belief. So they come up with a macro perspective, the government perspective, aggregated data. So they gathered and they have a huge database. And then they come up to analyze the structure of those data sets and come up with very systematic analysis. But once they reach some, we can say their maturity, the neoclassical, they refine again on the micro part of the theory, and then they construct it into a micro foundations of macroeconomics. We can say that to challenge Keynes' hypothesis, because the representations of Keynes is very, very brief, and they said a bit of misleading. Okay, so we can say that it is the incompleteness of the macro fundamental of Keynes' theory that motivate the advancements of, we can say that's neoclassical, okay, like their founder like Hicks and Samuelson. On the same arguments, okay, Modigliani and Milton Friedman, two very famous economists, developed the micro foundations of the consumptions theory that's being introduced by Keynes. Okay, so they come up with a very coherence between macro and macro foundations of microeconomics. So neoclassical is not new. They just empower, redefine certain theories to challenge Keynesians simplified versions of economy. Okay, that's why they come up with very structured and very systematic things. Okay, after that, we want to know the monetarisms. Okay, in 1970s, okay, the monetarists, we can say that they criticize Keynesian theory also, Milton Friedman, most famously for its relative neglect of, we can say, the variations in the money supply, okay, as a determinants of aggregate spending, and over one another issues, a very important issue is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy. Okay, that's monetarists believe that fiscal policy is not comprehensive enough, not adequate to address the economic problem. Then we need to come up with another, we call it as a monetary policy. So the monetarists insist that the classical proportions, okay, of neutrality of money had to hold, at least in the long run. They believe that on the monetarists, okay. But what matter to them is short run, okay. The short run, increase the money supply in short run would eventually result in a proportionate increase in prices. So they distinguish between short run and long run effects. That's a ground on the monetarist arguments, okay? And then monetarists come up with very complicated and very comprehensive statistical evidence where they come up with very clear evidence that money matter, okay? That's anything else not considered before. So we can say that this is the emergence of a new techniques in econometrics, okay, on the single equations basis. Okay, after monetarists in 1980s, they come up with real business cycle theory. So we need to know all those things because we want to have a very clear picture of literature review, to which school we are referring to which arguments we want to take as a basis of our theory. If we mix and we have a unclear partitions of those what do you call it, arguments, then we're going to have unclear modeling, especially in the third chapter of methodology and the discussions of results in chapter 4. Okay, so in 1980s, real business cycle groups proposes that business cycle is concerns on the supply side factors. Okay, Keynesians, they believe on the demand side, but if demand is very strong, the government is very strong, they give a lot of subsidies and then give a lot of incentive. But what happens if periodically, okay, disasters and so on and technological change does not support the demand side? So a real business cycle, they emphasize more on the supply side, such as we can say that the technological development, okay, on the productivity and on the techniques of producing things so that it become more efficient and more efficient. So these changes in technological growth affect decisions of firm on investment and workers, that is labor that is needed by the workers, by the firms. Okay, so we can say that it is to microeconomics. Real business cycles is on the microeconomics and on business on the supply side factors. So real business cycle model either completely reject or play down the role of aggregate demand and influencing the economic cycle. we can say that government interventions is counterproductive to supply, because it creates frictions, does not create efficiency to the firm's level. We can say that if the firm too dependent on the government, then it's become ineffective, and especially on the resource allocations of that firms. Okay, so these are the few, we can say that theory. Okay, the four theories on the conventional part, but lately they come up on where I list down on number 5, but it's not an rank, or it's only in terms of it's not all also telling you the importance, which number 5 does not important. No, what I can say is that lately the emerge of Islamic school, okay, where Malaysia, Indonesia, and most of the Muslim country can take a lead on this research, and this give you ample avenue for new research to have a very, we call it impactful results. Okay, we can, because Islamic economy, Islamic economic foundations is very solid, very strong. Okay, and have been tested many times, is proven. That's Islamic economy is very, very strong and very efficient. So the implementation of Sharia compliance product, okay, throughout the world by a conventional bank is solid evidence of vast potential of this Islamic economy. Okay, even though we can say that it's based on certain principle tauhid of jurisprudence, okay, on some of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but these things still growing and got some very strong interest, okay, from a very strong proponent of Islamic economy. I think it is the future area of research on Islamic economy. Nowadays, people are talking about on banking and financial sector only, but in fact, Islamic economy can cover every aspect of economy, from labor, okay, from markets, government side, productivity. There are a lot of issues in Islamic environment, okay, which I think is not covered yet from Islamic perspective. They talk about mostly talk about finance because we have data from banking sector, but on environment, how Islam solve the environmental problem, because SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, also in line and comply to certain Sharia rules. Okay, so it's very, very important on that. On Islamic perspective, I'm going to show to you later on Hassan 2005 on the consumer behavior. Okay, can we move on to some example? Okay, this is going to conclude my presentations on few example. Okay, for example, we have suppose that there are a few areas, but I just want to show you on the foundations of international trade and theory. Okay, this is one of my area. We noticed that the first person who writes on international trade is Heckscher. Okay, 1919. I cannot read because it's Swedish language, in Swedish Sweden, Swedish journal. But it's got a new perspective by Ohlin. That's why we have this Heckscher-Ohlin model, Heckscher-Ohlin paradox, Heckscher-Ohlin. There are a lot of issues by Heckscher-Ohlin. Okay, they argue the same things as Heckscher on the comparative advantage on inter-regional and international trade, meaning that we as different regions being endowed with different we call it natural resources to complement each other. It's not to, meaning that it's not to substitute, okay, not to compete, but to complement each other. That we need intra-regional trade or intra-regional connections. So in more, what do you call it, solid or systematic analysis, Leontief come in. That's why we have a Leontief matrix, okay, on backward forward linkages of these analysis. So these papers are interrelated, okay, on foreign trade, they are interrelated. So we can say that starting from Heckscher and then Olin, okay, and then move on to improve further. Okay, same with Kuhn. We have a very famous Kuhn Tucker, okay, in 1960s, and then Vanek also in 1963. Because time does not permit, I'm going to be a little bit fast, okay. And then there are few more papers that improve Olin 1933, like Lucas 1972 also. Okay, because I want to come up with the last paper, this Tamat Sarmidi 2019. So how we develop this to the final stage. Okay, and then what happened is that even though we have a trade where interaction between regions that promote equitable we call it efficient allocations of resources through comparative advantages. Country that's, for example, Indonesia has certain natural resources that other countries don't have. They trade between those countries. For example, Japan and Indonesia, okay, they trade. So from that comparative advantage, they have improve their economic well-being. But what happens? The developments of each country does not permit, okay, the total interactions, or we can say that total openness, liberalizations of economic sector in certain countries. For example, nowadays is very, we call it very true example, China and US on trade war. Because some protection, China want to protect their economy, and United States want to protect their economy. So they create some, we call it a barrier, okay? Can be in terms of tariff and non-tariff. So Edwards in 1998, you refer to this paper, okay? I'm going to give you the paper, meaning that's on this, how they develop this. So they said, they argue on openness and productivity and growth, okay? It needs to be fully open to improve productivity and growth. Trade does not have a trickling down effects or positive effects if they are not open and if there are a lot of restrictions. So they, and then Frankel and Romer come up with a very solid model. Does trade cause growth on the American Economic Review? So meaning that this paper talking about restrictions, like nowadays we call it Brexit, Britain, meaning that's leave the EU groups to have their own country because want to protect their economy. So it's against the orthodoxy, meaning that if theory mean that it's not good for Britain. So the argument is that when it is open, how to measure openness? Okay, then they are very focused on certain product, which we can say that it is incomplete. So in 2009, okay, in Economic Journal, we can say that Key, Nikita, and Olaregia, okay, they come up very interesting paper. What I can say that it is a new development. They come up with Trade Restrictiveness Index, TRI, okay, estimating trade restrictiveness indices on various sectors. Okay, and then this paper, okay, 2009, give me an understanding, okay, with my colleague, Zainuddin and Khalid, okay, and Sarmidi, to come up with, we consider that augmented trade restrictiveness index. This paper been published in International Journal of Economics and Management, okay, Scopus Q2, okay. So this paper is very good because we improve after 10 years, 2009, 2019, on trade restrictiveness indices, okay, where it's more comprehensive, where we include non-tariff barrier. It's not only the tariff, but it's not, it covers non-tariff barrier, and we move on to ASEAN countries and their major trading partners. So here, how we develop the literature review. Okay, we can go to the paper, but times is very limited. I can share my paper with you later on. Ibu Dia, I can give you the paper, or you can search the paper, and then how the developments of those literature review. Okay, another example, second example, I want to give you, which leads towards, okay, this Tamat Sarmidi, I sole author of this paper, even though it's 2010, but until now, I think not many papers studying on this, because I'm doing on Ringgit Malaysia predictability, do currencies and prediction horizon matter, on Journal Economy Malaysia. This one is Scopus Q, at the moment, Scopus Q3, okay, on this journal. This is a highly rated journal in Malaysia, and many Indonesians as well publish in this journal, Scopus Q3. It started from, okay, when we refer to Dornbusch expectation theory on very basic and very famous theory on purchasing power parity and uncovered interest parity theory, okay, which describe the law of one price. And then this expectation theory, where it's happened on the dynamics, meaning that time period when interest rate high in one country, and we expect that in year times that our currency going to appreciate further. So this creates a fundamental of predicting exchange rate on expectation theory under the theory of uncovered interest rate parity. Okay, so Mies and Rogoff, they formalized the model, but in 1980s and 1970s, the percent of predictability is very low, very, very low. So they say that exchange rate deviated from the fundamentals. Only in 1995, we can say that this is Mark 1995 is the seminal paper of, we can say that predictability. Under American Economic Review, the top journal in the world, they publish an exchange rate and fundamentals, showing that exchange rate does not deviate much from the fundamental, but what deviates from fundamental is a technique of estimations, which they argue that Marx 1995 argue that, okay, the technique that we use are not proper, not what do you call it, up to date to cater or to deal with non-linearity and non-stationarity of the where the mean and variance of the data set is non-constant, while the previous, meaning that Dornbusch, Mies and Rogoff and previous paper prior to 1995, they are assuming the mean and variance are constant, while Mark 1995, they introduce or improve further by we can say that they release the assumptions. Okay, they reduce the assumptions. They say that the variance and means are non-constant. and then improve further in Journal of Applied Econometrics. This is the theoretical part, okay, and then on applications, Killian's 1999, okay. What do we learn from long horizon regressions? Because the predictability matters for horizons, short run horizons and long run horizons, okay, and then improve further, and then come up in 2010s, after almost like 10 years, I myself published one paper on predictability of currencies. So basically, these are the model. This is exchange rate, okay. The different exchange rate, meaning that's from current exchange rate with future exchange rate, is on the one parameter, on the deviations between fundamental and the exchange rate. So I improve on the model 3, model 4, equation 4, 3, 4, and 5 on relative sticky price, flexible price. Okay, so these are the model that develops to improve on the estimation techniques. Okay, basically the same model, model 1 and equation 1. Only thing is that on the fundamental part, okay, I improve on the types of market behavior, for example. So this is how literature review improve our paper. Okay, another example. Okay, another example. You can read this paper. I myself, okay, in 2017, in 2018, on Journal of Economic Studies, this Corpus Q1, okay. The argument is very simple, okay. Simon Kuznets, very famous on Kuznets hypothesis, Kuznets curve, on non-linearity, okay. Economic growth and income equality, published in the American Economic Review. Okay, after that, Snyder, because economic growth and income equality, Snyder 2000s says that income inequality due to one reason, that is informal economy or shadow economies. So Snyder come up with some measurements how to calculate or how to calculate the size, causes, and consequences of shadow economy on income, on economic growth. So, with that understandings, okay, with this improvement, we, okay, calculate for Malaysia, paper in 2017, shadow economy in Malaysia, and we have a 13 state, like Indonesia got, like for example, Jawa, Indonesia, Jawa Barat, Jawa Tengah, Jawa Timur. So this is a state in Malaysia. We have Selangor, Johor. Okay, we want to first paper. We want to measures on shadow economy in Malaysia. Okay, using technique proposed by Snyder on mimic model, and then this paper one we calculate and then we improve on income inequality. Okay, but we argue that the relationship between inequality and informal economy, like Snyder and Rosa, they come up with linear measurements, while we come a non-parametric and semi-parametric analysis to argue that the relationship is non-linear and it is a functional form. So we come up with these two papers coming from these three, we call it like seminal paper. Okay. Okay. Another issues on the consumer behavior. The three examples that I give you just now is macroeconomics. Okay. Now we move on to microeconomics. I give you two examples of microeconomics before I conclude this presentation. Okay, those who get the Nobel laureate, Gary Becker, okay, 1973, come up with on the new theory of consumer behavior. Okay, they argue that social wealth, like Cobb-Douglas production functions, they get an output, okay, that create wealth. But Becker argue that output, not wealth, not necessarily physical. Okay, it can be recognitions, because people want to they want to spend money not only buying physical goods, seperti mau beli beras, beli mobil, itu kan nampak physical. But sometimes Becker 1973 argue that people want to buy something because of prestige. If you wear one shoes, for example Adidas, okay, just an example, people will recognize you as somebody, meaning that's a well-off. But not nowadays anymore. Okay, if you drive Bentley, suppose a car, it's not only you pay for the price of the car, but you pay the prestige as well. For example, Mercedes. Okay, it's not a car only, but you pay for the prestige. So this the basis of Becker 1973 on social assets. Okay. So they come up with, Becker 1974 come up with a theory of social interactions, because you interact with people, people will regard you somebody. For example, if you meet someone, you show to him is an Apple iPhone. Okay, so it is satisfaction based on certain utility functions. You feel that you being meaning that regarded as somebody in the society. So we come up with that idea, okay, with some paper, I myself, Rashid, and okay, on institution and economies, this very good journal, okay, to come up with, does income gap matter for household debts accumulations? Meaning that with one's proverbs, that's keeping up with Jonases, maksudnya seperti jiran kita membeli perabot ataupun rumah baru, perkakas rumah yang baru, maka kita juga mau mengikut mereka. Nanti istrinya bagi tahu rumah jiran kita sudah tukar televisi kan, contohnya, kepada yang terkini. So maksudnya isi rumah juga mau berbelanja seperti jirannya. So in English we call it keeping up with Jonases. Tetapi mereka tidak mampu, maka inilah proses yang dinamakan household debt meningkat di banyak negara kerana yaitu interactions theory. So we come up with some arguments in the paper, in our paper, okay, equation 1, 2, 3 to 5, okay, where it's not only goods, but it's time, but the expectations, okay, with R, of others' expectations of the society. If you live in developed society, the expectation is different from developing countries. So utility that you get, not only from goods that you buy, but your social interactions are. And social interactions can be two. One is forced, one is voluntary. So come up with the total expenditure in the market. So we come up with this model to estimate it. So this how we move on to produce a paper. Okay, sorry very much because I'm not in the, of course I'm a Muslim, but I'm not doing research on Islamic economy. That's why I did not come up with a paper written by myself on Islamic economy. But I can guarantee you this part, because through my discussions and my interactions with people expert in Islamic economy, this part has not been researched well. Okay, I put this in my macroeconomic paper, in my macroeconomics class, teaching S2, okay, but has not been done or being researched. I welcome anyone want to explore further on this issue. Okay, the issue is like seminal paper on Iqbal 1985. This is very famous Islamic economist, Journal of Research in Islamic Economics, Jeddah. Okay, moderations and aggregate consumption. They argue that the MPC, marginal propensity to consume, I'm not very sure in Indonesia what does MPC, but because of people pay zakat, so their total consumptions may reduce. because of zakah accumulation. So there are some accusations saying that in Islam, the total aggregate consumptions is far less compared to conventional countries, non-Islamic countries. And another issue is that not only zakah, but moderations of life. Because Muslim, they try to kehidupan yang sederhana, kan? Moderate life. They are not conspicuous spending. They are not lavish. They are not buying things beyond their necessities. So moderations. So they argue that what do you call it? Zakah and moderation in life going to reduce aggregate consumptions in Islamic economy. So Hassan 2002 and Hassan 2005 formalized the argument that it is not. Okay, it is not. But these two is only in a theoretical paper. Okay, they postulate that no, in Islamic economy, in fact, the aggregate consumptions is much better or greater than conventional economy. Okay, so this the theoretical foundations on Islamic consumption behavior that postulate higher MPC than conventional MPC. So in Iqbal to 1985, okay, total consumptions, aggregate consumptions, even though it is individual consumptions, okay, but they aggregated an asterisk, meaning that's on macroeconomy, even though the model is microeconomy. So there are two components, those who pay zakat and those who receive zakat and their spendings. Okay, because initially the argument is that they criticize on the total why. Because under zakah, we have to allocate or put aside some amount of income for zakah payment. That's why they say that C is lower in Islamic economy. But in fact, this part of zakah paid to the penerima zakat, meaning that zakat receiver. And zakat receiver, because it's the poor people and conventional economy, prove that the lower income group got a higher MPC. That's why this theta is greater than this C. Okay, to show that this component is from, we can say that's a lower income group. That's why theta is, meaning that the MPC, this theta is MPC greater than the C of higher income groups. And Hassan 2005 also increased or improved the paper, not income, all income paid zakat is only a certain proportions of zakat. So compare between these two, okay, there is no mu. Under here, they got mu because of certain proportions for zakat payment. Okay, so there are a lot of questions of using this equation, which one is performing better, okay, whether income tax or zakah has not been studied to my knowledge, okay. Is it tax or zakah is better? How about MPC in developed, in conventional or non-Islamic countries and Muslim countries? So there are a lot of issues here can improve from this literature review, Iqbal 1985 and Hassan 2005. I think this on macroeconometrics part is not what we call it relevant to our studies. This is on development of issues. There are a lot of econometrics issues which I happy to explain it maybe in future times. Okay. So basically, publication, especially on quality publication, is not easy way. A lot of issues. It need dedication, patience, and hard work to have publications. Every people, every existence got the purpose. Okay, like this one. This cow produce milk. Okay, but if does not fulfill the purpose, the owner will slaughter the cow and get the meat. Similar, if this horse is for racing, does not serve the purpose, then the owner will sell it or slaughter it to get the horse meat to make a burger. So nothing's easy. Okay, riding a bicycle, every one of us here can ride a bicycle, but does not come to we know how to ride a bicycle or cycle a bicycle in easy way after many times trying and fall down and got bruised. Okay, and then we try. After that, okay, it's not easy. It's not easy to stop our young child from lactating or taking milk with bottles or from mother's breastfeeding. It's not easy, but we have to try to stop our child, okay, younger one, from lactating. Okay, it's not easy. If we try, then now cycling is very easy. Okay, then we can see that if our child did not stop drinking milk only, then they cannot have this very what do you call it, very delicious nasi biryani or nasi buri di Indonesia. Okay, so if they only drink milk, so we have to try and stop some things and to start with new things. Okay. Ini pun sudah tengah hari kan, sudah mau makan nasi ni, sudah lapar. Yeah. I think that's all. Reading is not easy. Counting is not easy, but after trying swimming, everything. Okay, and one of the Pythagoras Greek mathematician says there is nothing so easy, but that it become difficult when you do it reluctantly, meaning that you don't want. Barack Obama says also the same things. And one of the artists, Rihanna, says the same thing. But we can say that nothing is impossible. Okay, for them, thank you very much. So we need to try. Thank you, Ibu Dia.
Terima kasih banyak Prof. Tamad. Jadi yang sudah disampaikan itu sangat menarik, ya materinya sangat menarik sekali. Harapan saya nanti bisa menginspirasi mahasiswa untuk menulis gitu ya, menulis dengan lebih baik lagi.
Ya, terima kasih.
Pada kesempatan kedua ini kami berikan waktu kepada Pak Mohtar Rashid untuk menyampaikan materinya. Kali ini Pak Mohtar saya kasih batasan waktu maksimal 30 menit. Silakan Pak Mohtar. Pak Mohtar.
Oke, baik. Mohon maaf, Budian. Tadi ada masalah teknis sebentar ya. Oke, terima kasih ya atas pertanyaannya. Tadi saya mendengarkan dengan hikmat ya penyampaian dari Profesor Tamad. Saya pikir saya tidak perlu lagi menyampaikan karena sudah terlalu lengkap ya apa yang disampaikan ya dari Profesor ini ya Tamad tadi. Katanya dengan masalah literatur review. Saya hanya mungkin ingin menambahkan beberapa hal yang terkait dengan masalah literatur review, beberapa isu-isu yang terkait dengan itu dikaitkan dengan riset-riset di bidang ilmu ekonomi. Mohon izin Bu Dia, mungkin bisa ini ya sharing saya ini share screen.
Silakan share Pak Mohtar. Oh, Prof. Tamad belum exit.
Yeah, sorry. I
Yeah.
stopped my sharing. Okay, sorry, yes.
Ya, sudah bisa. Silakan Pak Mohtar.
Ya, oke.
Oke. Bisa ini ya Bu ya, bisa ini bisa cek ya. Baik.
Sudah kelihatan.
Mungkin saya hanya menambahkan beberapa hal saja terkait dengan masalah isu-isu yang terkait dengan masalah literatur. Jadi apa yang ingin saya sampaikan sebenarnya ini merupakan sesuatu yang apa namanya sudah lama ya, tapi mungkin ini perlu disampaikan ke mahasiswa pasca sarjana di MIO, di UTF khususnya, tentang literatur review dalam publikasi ekonomi. Saya ingin menyampaikan bahwa sebenarnya memang literatur review sebagaimana sudah disampaikan oleh Profesor Tama itu merupakan sesuatu yang esensial dalam publikasi ilmiah. Nah, di sini saya hanya ingin menambahkan isu-isunya kaitannya dengan masalah ada dua model sebenarnya dalam literatur review, yaitu model yang disebut sebagai model naratif ya, atau mungkin apa namanya review yang sifatnya sistematik. Apa itu yang sistematik? Nanti kita bisa jelaskan berikut dengan beberapa aplikasi. Dalam literatur